Hello and welcome to the Dirty, Messy, Alive Embodied Memoir Writing Workshop Series. I am here with Dr. Nicole Dolan, and we are exploring the art of chaos, a memoir writing journey of healing and transformation. Dr. Nicole Dolan, PhD, is a depth psychologist, author, and founder of Sacred Path Holistic Therapy. Her forthcoming memoir, The Art of Chaos, chronicles her journey through trauma, motherhood, and spiritual awakening, offering a powerful example of transformation on the page. Nicole blends depth psychology with storytelling craft to help memoirists mine their lived experience for universal themes, guiding them to shape captivating narratives that are raw, resonant, and true. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Me too. You don't know it, dear viewers, but this was our fourth attempt to get the recording started. so, okay, so what I want to start with is orienting our watchers and listeners to exactly where in the memoir writing process you are, because your memoir is not out in the world yet. So for everyone watching, you're going to have to hold your horses and wait for the publication date. But I thought it was really lovely to be able to talk to someone writing a memoir in the midst of the process, or, well, it's written, but now you're in the midst of figuring out how to get it out into the world so other people can read it. And there's so many big different stages of the memoir writing process. So what I would love to start with is if you just describe where in the process you're at, and then we're going to reverse gears all the way back to that moment when you first got the idea that you might want to write your life stories and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, where I'm at in the process is I have completed my manuscript and we have completed a book proposal, and I'm working with a coach who is actually a retired literary agent to start querying some of the agents that we're really interested in working with. So we're not fully landed with the agent that we're going to work with yet, and we're not in publishing at all yet. So I'm past proposal and writing. And as we'll get into, I've been writing for 10 years. So for me, it was a choice that it was a long journey. But that's where we stand right now today. And I will also share through, having support, editor, and coach, I've done a lot of outreach too. So it's been really exciting. I'm in a process of sharing about the story in the book, lots of podcasts and different articles and things like that. So that's been an exciting opportunity that can come along as well along this journey.
Yeah, and in fact, that's how we connected. Is you sent me a thoughtful email describing what you're doing and asking for some attention and support. And the timing was just perfect for my curating of this event. And so I invited you to share about it. So for those of you who are facing the daunting task of promoting yourself, it does work.
Yeah, it's been a blessing I've shared with you. I'm very grateful for the invitation and also the opportunity to speak to people that are in this process or thinking about beginning this process. I mean, there's such a blessing in being able to be, not completely on the other side yet, but being okay, like I'm here on the finish line, and now I can, speak to those who are maybe coming behind me a little bit. So
Yeah. And a couple other clarifications before we start at the beginning that I think will be helpful is that often, if you're wanting to pursue traditional publishing with memoir, which is nonfiction, it's necessary to write a nonfiction book proposal. I've written one of those. It's languishing in my storage unit. Needs to be rewritten at this point, but there's the book itself, and then there's a nonfiction book proposal is its own fairly big document. So you've written two bodies of work around your life story, um, and your memoir is Memoir Plus, which I'd love you to also just explain a little bit about how Memoir Plus is different than just straightforward memoir.
Yeah. So I didn't even know Memoir Plus was a thing until I started getting to a place of acquiring support and coaching in this work, where I was with my book. And it was taught to me that Memoir Plus, and why my book is Memoir Plus, is because I'm teaching. So having a clinical background, I can certainly bring that through. But all of us have things to teach, right? And I really am very intentional in this book about teaching in the way I do as a depth psychologist, through storytelling and through really bringing you into my experiences with the full intention of seeding your journey and pulling you through. And I did eventually go back and since we're not published yet, we'll see if this is what the publishers want. But I did actually go back at one point and recognize, as we'll get into, like some of the themes through the integration process. I was recognizing that, oh, there's specific things that I'm teaching. So I did go back and not like each chapter, but say like each part of the book, kind of add a little bit of a reflection for people. And so I feel like that's a description of Memoir Plus too, in the sense that it's like, it's memoir, it's telling my story, it's sharing, but the intention is deeply very much to also teach people and to bring them into their stories too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, so memoir always starts with some kind of collection of experiences that are so compelling we end up wanting to work through them and write about them. So let's back up, and could you start with the genesis of the
Yeah.
story, when the ideas, the life experiences that percolated you into the idea of writing?
Sure. So my personal experience, which of course manifested through this book, is I actually started writing about 10 years ago. I was working on my doctorate, and I was fascinated by things like destiny in relationships and synchronicities, and had questions about free will and also trauma as catalyst for transformation. That also came about because of my work. I've often, as depth psychologist, been a very different kind of practitioner. So the questions that we are asking people is not necessarily like, how do we alleviate and get rid of anxiety or depression, but like, what does the soul want? Like, what's stirring underneath that's asking to be lived? And of course, there are healing aspects to that that come along the way first, often. So I was in trauma work. I was working on my PhD, and I was writing very academically and finding that I really wanted to write non-academically. So I was also kind of writing it then a little bit, but at that point I was really just gathering notes. I was having the experiences where I was like, this feels very different, and I do want to teach this and share this, but I didn't know exactly what that meant, right? So I was just kind of note taking, writing stories, playing with it for a little bit for a number of years. And then I would say about 5 years ago is when I sat down and I said, okay, we're gonna write the book now. And the book started in a place where my intention was to share that everything happens for a reason, but with a whole lot more depth. And the reason for that, my collection of experiences, is I'm somebody who's experienced, I have a trauma history, and I'm somebody who's experienced things that many people, when they go through those things, even if it's just a heartbreak, right? I mean, we've all experienced heartbreak, but whatever it is, often people will get very stuck, right? Like, maybe I'm never going to love again, or they'll consistently live out the same pattern over and over again because energetically, or maybe on a nervous system imprint level, they're continuing to live that pattern. So there were a lot of reasons that I understood as a psychologist why some of these things happen, but as a person and as, author and memoirist, it just felt like I could be somebody who could share about lived experiences that have been really, really hard, and also show not only how you can transmute, transform, and come through them, but for me, what happened in that is I began to really open up intuitively. Like, my own spiritual journey started to really evolve and open tremendously, even as soon as I was healing. So I was learning something about myself too that aligned with depth psychology as well. It was like, okay, like once we, get these other needs met, or we work through these traumas, or we have these experiences, now there's space for more. And so I really wanted to write about that. And that was the genesis of the book. And then I wanted to tie it in a beautiful bow and say, and then Nicole lived happily ever after. And then while I was writing this book, and so this was actually longer than 5 years ago, while I was writing this book in some form of my writing, then I became a mother. And motherhood initiated me into, trauma, pain, chaos, but also, spiritual awakening and healing, and, going back into not only healing my wounds, but, the wounds of my ancestral line, etc. It brought me to chaos as crucible. And so I had written this book. I wanted it to be complete. I actually sent it to my editor, I think in 2020. And as soon as I sent it, I was like, oh, I like intuitively knew. I was like, oh, it's not done.
Mm.
Okay. What else do I have to do?
Frustrating, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually knew. I was like, it's only like half of the book. Like I have to write like another half of a book.
Mhm.
And the hardest part wasn't even the writing, it was the living. It was like I have to keep living like through this and then writing about it. And so what's a little bit different about, well, very different from what I imagined my memoir to be, is I imagined it to be, well, let me teach you this thing from the stage, to I'm writing to you from the sacred mess. Like I am in the chaos. And for me that meant, marriage troubles, and it meant having an autistic child who was screaming and raging and getting kicked out of places, and there was no normalcy for me as a mother. And I had two other children, and I was taking care of my father who was dying, and I had my mother next door, so I had my mother wounds flaring while I was trying to mother. And I'm running a nonprofit, and I'm building this, and I'm so just chaos,
Yeah.
total
Yeah.
chaos.
That's a lot.
And I went through, many seasons. But to get back to like the story of the book, what I can tell you with that and the becoming of it is, I got to this place where I'd kind of brought, say, like a few chapters of what I'm sharing with you now into the book.
Mhm.
And I had the neat and tidy part, and then I had the like, okay, part two, fine, here it is. And then I started working with a team. I had my editor online. I brought in my book coach. I started working with people when I started feeling like I really want to bring this out into the world in a big way.
Mhm.
And I know that we need support. It takes a village. And when I did, I remember my the literary agent I was working with. I remember him saying to me, "This part that you don't want to talk about. This is the story,"
Mhm.
which I imagine will just resonate with anyone who's written a memoir. So it was okay. This is the story. So I wound up finding out overall, and I think that this speaks to the story of the book as well and the writing process, because I wound up finding out through like surrendering to that, listening to the call, and trusting that, like, just trusting the process, no matter how hard that felt or messy or scary in ways. But just letting go of the fears of, how's my daughter going to feel about me writing this, or of course family members, or so letting go of those fears, letting go of like a lot of the stress and anxiety, so really surrendering to the process, saying, okay, I trust this as guidance, I trust my team. So I leaned into this process and I wrote from this place, and what wound up happening is, remember that beginning of the book, which was about like old trauma history, it wound up being this really beautiful integration process where I was speaking to mothers about, hey, when your child's having a meltdown, or you're having a difficulty, in some way in motherhood, especially to neurodivergent parents of neurodivergent children, what's coming up in you? What is your child teaching you, and what's coming up in the past? And I wound up really cueing in on, nervous system imprints, and what were the stories in my body that were coming alive in my role as mother, and how can I use that to guide others. So that is where the book eventually went. And when it went, I had that experience of like, okay, you can trust the process. This is all for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm very grateful. I feel like the message is something that's so necessary and supportive to so many. But yeah, that's my journey with my own resistance
Yeah,
and
so a couple specific questions. You made it through these tough parts, but tell us a little more about like the doubt and the very difficult parts of writing the story when you don't know if you're going to figure out what the core of the story is, and you don't know if it's going to be any good, and you don't know if you're going to like survive the process. Or tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I will say that I have the benefit of my background because that's how I do work as a therapist. That's how I work and teach as a psychologist. Is it's we do trust in, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey. We trust in going into the unknown. And so stepping into the places that are really uncomfortable and don't feel good and don't make sense, and you kind of just feel like you're in this, like, you're in the forest and you can't see the trees, right? Or you're in like the muck and you have no idea that there might be a lotus. So it's hard, but it's the work of transformation, it's the work of alchemy. And so because I know that's how people transform and that's how they heal, I was able to hold that container here, like while I did this. But I will say, I mean, it was hard. What I mean, the hardest part was living in the actual, like, absolute chaos of it, and then feeling like it was so unintegrated. Even when I completed the book the third time, I don't even know, right? I actually finally like let go enough to say, okay, maybe my memoir, maybe it is okay just to land in the mess and to speak from that place, because it wasn't comfortable. I feel like over time I integrated more, but I had to lean in and surrender to what was and just trust and keep going.
So I love specificity.
Sure.
What would be a moment of like, how would you describe one of those moments of blah? And in real specifics, where were you sitting? What was going on? What internally and around you? And because I know, I mean, there's knowing a lot of things, there's having a lot of skills because of doing and facilitating transformational work for other people. And then there's the lived experience of being in it and, you know, knowing you should know these things, knowing you do know these things, but the real grappling of of an image that's coming to mind is like being in a rowboat or a canoe holding on to both edges and the water's choppy, and actually you're only 3 inches from the dock, but it feels like, oh my god, the dock is there, I'm in the boat, but can I actually reach it? The resources are there, and what are those specifics in that writing process?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. I'm paying attention to my intuition because it brings up images and imagery for me too. And I think what I most see is vulnerability of sharing. Meaning there was something about being polished, right? There was something about being like, I'm the expert and I'll teach you how to move through these things, this transformation, right? To your point. And then there was something about sharing more about my children and my family. And it wasn't so much that I was afraid to. I'm a very authentic person. I wish more people would tell their stories so we can just all share how messy life is for real. But so I'm very open, but I I felt like maybe people wouldn't be that interested. in that, right?
Mhm.
Like, maybe they don't wanna hear about, "Oh my gosh, like, 3 of my kids being born." Like, I mean, I didn't go into detail about all of it, I was mindful about how much you do share to keep, the audience captivated, but it just felt like the mundane. So, I was somebody who, in my own hero's journey, had, gone through, like, really intense healing work with like PTSD, and then, put on a backpack and traveled around Thailand and like went to so it just, I had this journey in my mind of, this is healing. And that's where that book first started. And so to be in a place where it's like, I'm not feeling clarity around like this one thing that's injured in me that I need to go fix and heal. And there's no linear path. And I'm not able to just get on a plane and go spend time in Bali or something to get over it, like it just became so real, and what I mean by real is like, having an autistic child, sometimes a PDA profile, pervasive drive for autonomy, they came here to say like, we're done with the systems of this earth. Like, so, my child might, take a pair of scissors and cut a hole in her screen because she wants to go out on the roof and chase some bird or whatever, right? While my baby is, crying at my hip, and my son needs me to come see the movie that he made out of his Legos. And, the nanny just quit because she's like, this is insane. I can't help you and your family. And my husband just had to start traveling to Canada, so he's gone. I mean, just being in like pure chaos.
Mhm.
But what I can say too is, it was part of my, and I'd love for people to really hear this too. That was part of my journey too, meaning I was, for a period of time, so deeply attuned to like that way of life, that, intuition and spiritual journey, and I still am. I still love that, but I wasn't like fully in the flesh.
Mhm.
I didn't have to find meaning in the mundane until I was stuck in these situations.
Parenting really does that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's such meaning to that too, though, because whether it's parenting or whatever part of our life it is that is trapping us and feeling like chaos, or feeling just like unending or hard, for some people it's chronic pain or whatever it is, right? It is our teacher. It's not always easy. It doesn't always feel good, but it is our teacher. It is part of our transcendence. And for me, in order to transcend, I had to come home. And while I think that's the answer for everyone, I mean, I literally had to come home. I literally had to sit in this level of mess, which which wasn't typical for me. And I'll wrap there by just saying this too, as far as motherhood. Most moms, I'm not going to overgeneralize, but in my experience, most moms are comfortable in, not always comfortable. They have a hard time too, but in parenting and like, making the meals and setting the schedules and things like that. And because I am on the opposite side of that, because I was so career focused, it was part of my journey to actually, like, some moms need to like kind of come out of self-abandonment. I needed to stop self-abandoning in different ways, but I needed to actually come into the mess of the normal, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So are you sure you want to know? Are you sure you want to? That's why, as we write, we can
100%. Yeah,
hydrate
it's
it.
I mean, and that's also kind of the dance between wanting to show up as perfect, as put together, and needing to show up as real,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So, so how long did it take you to write? Yeah.
Well, like I said, I started about 10 years ago with the idea and wanting to, and that was just really about life circumstances, and then also trusting in divine timing as far as when it was meant to together. But I think it was about 2019, so about 5 years ago, that I said, okay, I'm going to make this part of my schedule. So I had days on my schedule that became today I write a book. So I see clients on these days and I mother at these times, but at this time on my schedule, I go and I write a book. And, sometimes that feels great and it comes through and you're like, this was awesome. And sometimes you stare at a blank page for 3 hours and that's your job.
Okay, and then at what point did you discover you also had to write a non-fiction book proposal, and how was that process?
I think I always knew that it was coming. I just, was putting it over there until it was time. I was very fortunate. I feel like what was supportive was creating a team, having an editor, having a book coach, a retired literary agent. I was guided through writing that proposal in pieces. So I was doing like chapter summaries. I was doing, the different edits and taking pieces of like looking at the book and seeing like where is the arc. I was taught to print the entire thing out and, put it all out in front of me and kind of just play with seeing the themes and seeing the arc and bringing it to life in that way. So I did a lot of that work before it came time to actually having to create proposal, and also marketing plan through some of the genius outreach that we did. Honestly, also created that marketing plan along the way. So a big task, but also something that because I knew beforehand, it was really intentional the whole way of like really breaking it down into pieces as I went. So it didn't feel at the end like just this monster of a next thing that you have to do.
Yeah, and I recall, I think mine totaled about, with the sample chapter, about 80 pages. How many pages is yours, just to give people a sense of things?
So I think it's about I want to say it was about like 65, but then I had the marketing plan in there with like all of the people that I had outreach to. We had quite a significant um, interest, thankfully, of people that were open to receiving copies, and so we included all of their names and bios and stuff, and so that took up quite a few pages too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And now, what stage are you at? And what are you anticipating the next tasks of getting this memoir out into the world are?
Yeah, so we are getting ready to query some of our favorite top agents that we're hoping to work with, and I'm also deeply surrendered into the right person will like you'll feel the right fit. So I'm excited for that. That the plan for that is in the fall. Most of these guys take the summer off. So that's coming. And from there, I honestly have taken things step by step in this regard. So I do know that, at least in my mind, where I am and what I understand is that from there, hopefully you're signing with an agent, and then that agent is, selling or proposing the work, and then you have a book deal. One thing that I do know and I am committed to is publishing, or I'm sorry, not publishing, promoting my work. Being really intentional as a partner. I think that that's something that I was taught and makes a lot of sense to me too, right? I'm not asking someone to come along and carry it through all the way. I do like having that support. Wonderful. I am calling that in, but I am showing up as a partner too. So that writing time now becomes okay. Well, this is where I'm dedicated to promoting that and also just teaching what I want to teach because I'm passionate about what I do and I feel like it can be really supportive to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point for people who are interested in teaching through their experiences and their stories. A lot of people come to my work with a desire to offer a difficult experience that they've had as a guide so that other people don't have to go through it in quite as rough a fashion. And then if that is also combined with training a body of work and expertise, it often becomes something like memoir plus, or also gets called prescriptive nonfiction, where there's a strong teaching and thematic, researched thematic element that goes with the story. So I just want to speak to our watchers to say this is a really viable, valid way to approach memoir. And the story still has to be primary, but the story is in service of the growth and the teaching that you want to also offer.
Yeah, certainly. And that's what I'm offering in the All Access Pass is some support in kind of playing with that or feeling into like how do you do that? How do you share your story and then also teach without it being, prescriptive necessarily?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Prescriptive nonfiction is like just a term for self help
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I
So
kind of like that. I actually haven't heard that before, but
yeah, I think when I did my nonfiction book proposal, that was one of the categories that
okay.
um, mine fell into. Memoir plus wasn't really a term that I came across as much 5 or 6 years ago.
I
Um,
guess Memoir Plus feels a little softer,
yeah,
less prescriptive.
yeah. Um, is there anything else you wanted to share about this whole memoir writing process that you're on and personal journey?
Let's see. Well, it's been the first word that came was blessing, but then I was like, it's been extraordinarily challenging too. I've been really intentional lately in my own prayer and meditation to say, okay, I'm releasing chaos as teacher now, because it's been it's that's a lot for someone's nervous system too, so it's been a journey, but it's been a meaningful journey that I am grateful for. I'm still a mother and a human in the mess, and so I'm really intentional, just like we were saying, about being really authentic and just telling the truth. And I think that that's what I would really share with listeners and viewers too is like tell the truth sounds so simple and obvious because you're writing a memoir, but like tell the truth. Like I think that this process really does not only like unearth things in us, but it dissolves us in a way, right? Like just like alchemy, it calls on us to show up in authenticity for others because we are stepping into a sacred responsibility when we do take on a project like this and we say, I'll show you the way forward.
Yeah,
So, that's what comes through.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So, a couple details for everyone. If you are interested in that all access pass goodie that Nicole mentioned, scroll down. If you have the pass, it's in the bonus section. If you don't have the pass, scroll down and you can buy the pass. There's a link that prompting you to buy the pass. Um, and if you're intrigued by Nicole, want to get closer to her work, follow the book's journey, so on and so forth. Nicole, how can people get closer to you and work with you as well?
Sure. Yeah. So I would love that. So I'm on Instagram. That's probably my most active platform right now. It's at Dr. Nicole Dolan. And certainly I can be reached through my website, which is also drnicoledolan.com. And, for those who, are interested in reaching out in this process, I am an open book. I've been there too. And then for those that might resonate, as mothers or anyone interested in how I work with people psychologically, certainly that's welcome too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.